leaders, welcome to the Together Project. I'm Kadi Cole, and if you're here, it's because you believe that real leadership means making room for everyone at the table. This season, we are sitting down with church leaders and innovative teams who are doing just that, breaking barriers, challenging assumptions, and shaping a healthier path for men and women to lead in ministry together. So if you're passionate about what it means to lead with authenticity, to make space for different voices, and to create a future where everyone can thrive, then you are in the right place. And if you believe in what we are doing, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the podcast and write a review. Reviews really help the algorithm suggest our podcast to more people. You can also follow me on social media at Kadi Cole, that's spelled Kadicole, and visit kadicole.com to sign up for my monthly newsletter and find all the other resources we have on the topic of developing female leaders. Because as Christians, we know that the future isn't male or female. The future is together. Let's dive in. Today's guest is someone I've known and respected for a long time, Dave Ferguson. Dave is the founding pastor at Christian Community Church in Chicago, the visionary behind the New Thing Church Planting Network, and the CEO of Exponential. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working alongside Dave in areas of leadership and multi-site, and I really appreciate the way he approaches the topic of women in leadership with humility, curiosity, and intentional action. In this episode, we dive into Dave's personal story, from being raised by a strong, affirming mom, to wrestling with theology, to how his convictions about women in leadership became a strategic priority in the organizations he leads. He shares the practical shifts he's made to elevate women in ministry and what he's still learning along the way. Whether you're just starting this journey or have been advocating for years, Dave brings some powerful insights, helpful ideas, and a whole lot of heart. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Dave Ferguson. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. We've known each other for a long time, but particularly around this topic of women in leadership, I've really appreciated just you and your interest in this topic and how you've been a champion for it in very upfront ways and a lot of behind the scenes ways. So thanks for coming and sharing with us your experience.
Thanks for having me, Kadi. It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. Every time I'm with you, I learn something. So I'm excited about this.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So I'd love to start off with just what your experience was like growing up. Was gender kind of something that was talked about a lot as a child? Did you have a lot of role models as women leaders or not so many? What was that like as a kid growing up for you?
My mom and dad they're terrific people, first of all. And they've been married like over 60 years. They love each other. They love Jesus. But they had, I would say, whatever you'd call them, traditional roles, where my mom stayed at home. She did most of the cooking. My dad worked. But as I think about my mom, though, she was the kind of person and definitely had leadership gifts. If you were around her, you would leave feeling better about yourself and more confident in yourself. So to have a mom like that, I've often compared her. She was like a really good coach. So she wasn't like some people can be gooey when they're affirming and complimenting and stuff. Not at all. It was more like she'd grab you like this by the collar and go like, "Hey, you got this. You got." And so like, this sounds really. And some people hate me for this. I think sometimes when I say this stuff, but this is the truth. Like, I think like I remember when I went to college. It was in college, I think, was the first time like I had like real kind of like doubt or lack some self-confidence. And I remember thinking even then, it was like, whatever, I was 18 or 19, going, oh, this is what people feel. And part of it, though, was because I think I had a mom who was like constantly like, no, you can do this. You can do this. And so like, even before I feel like the Holy Spirit was kind of like prompting me, there was like my mom was inside of me with that voice. Does that make sense now? And my dad's a great guy. So it's not a slight against him, but I think it's an affirmation of who she was in my life. So
sounds like she had a lot of I see in you conversations with you, Dave, throughout your lifetime.
Seriously. Yes, that's exactly right. No, she did. She absolutely did. You're right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great way to grow up. So as you were growing then in leadership and felt called into ministry, when did you start to realize that gender was a thing in church leadership?
That's a great question. So we planted community. I was 25. John was 23. There was a bunch of friends from college, and
just babies. You guys were just babies.
Oh yeah. In some ways, what were we thinking? It is funny. And I look back at it now and go like, wow, I can't believe people stuck around. But at the same time, anybody who's out there who's 25, I'd say go for it.
Go for it. Now's the time. Now is the time.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I wonder if it wasn't even back in the day, Willow Creek's influence, because planting a church in the suburbs of Chicago, that's where we started. And we've gone beyond that. But I think they were a pretty big influence on everybody. And they had affirmed that women could serve according to their gifts. They had women elders, they had women teachers, that kind of stuff. And so when we got ready to plant, I remember we were really wrestling with the question about around eldership, whether women could be elders or not. And so this goes back over 30 years now. And so we formed something we called a leadership advisory team. And it was, I think, and I just put that team together, which was going to be a precursor to having elders at some point. And we did put one woman on that. And one of the first challenges they tackled was the issue around women and leadership. And literally, they wrestled with it for about 18 months, and they went back and forth. And at the end of it, we decided that women, we really felt like what the Bible had to say was that women could serve according to their giftedness at any level. And I would say, for me personally, and we can get into it if you want, that became a theological conviction for me, solely from a biblical perspective. But I wouldn't say I don't think it became mission critical until later on.
Oh, interesting. So tell me, I want to talk more about that, of course, but tell me a little bit about the church you grew up in. Was that a church that had women leading at all levels, or were there limitations to that?
Well, of course, like most churches, yes, there are women leading. Now, what do they call them?
Good point.
There was, they did not have women elders, or they had women on staff in roles, but they did not have women elders. And my dad was a pastor, and so he did most of the teaching most of the time. So I don't really remember it growing up being a topic of conversation.
So with the church plant, you really dove into it, made a decision. Talk to me a little bit then about this difference between a theological conviction to something that became mission critical to go after.
Yeah, I think for me, I remember we made the decision. There were a handful of people who felt like that was not right, so they left the church, which is never a pleasant experience, but we were okay with that because we felt like we had made the right choice. And I remember not long after that, and we were 2 or 3 years old, I got a few calls from different people saying, hey, would you come and talk about this? And the mission at Community Christian Church has always been to help people find their way back to God. And I'm very passionate about that. And then also, of course, church planning and that kind of stuff. And so I remember thinking about it as we got offers to go place. And I was like, I'm not really interested. And it doesn't seem as important. And so I was like, no, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. The hill I'm going to die on is to help people find their way back to God. And I know what really shifted for me though was when my daughter Amy turned 16 or 17. She was somewhere in there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure you probably heard this from other folks, but for me, she had decided, I know, actually it was more like 17 or 18 because she had decided she wanted to be a youth pastor. So we started looking for colleges, and we were looking for colleges that one, she wanted to go to, but then also in addition to that, who really believed in the authority of Scripture, but also would encourage women in their gifting to lead and also have some women who are actually leading those departments. And we were just like, is there none of this? I mean, I think I just didn't realize it. It was, discouraging both for her and for me. And I think that was when I was going like, okay, you know what? If you got women who are really wanting to make a difference in this way, and there's already those kind of obstacles, this is not right. And I remember it wasn't long after that I got asked to write a chapter in a book on this topic. And I did. And I framed it that way for me, how it had been a long held theological conviction, but I began to see now, you know what? If we're going to try to get the mission of Jesus accomplished, but we're going to do it with like one arm, I described it as one arm tied behind our back, this just seems foolish. And so that's where, for me, I think even less and less, because the theological assumption, I totally feel like it's comfortable and grounded in Scripture. But the priority of trying to get the mission done and doing it shorthanded just seems foolish. And so that's where it became more of a strategic concern for me. And really, and you can even hear it in my voice, and it really moved from my head to my heart.
So what were the things? You have a lot of leadership, you have a lot of influence, especially at that time. You were still co-lead pastor of your church in Chicago. You're overseeing New Thing Network. You have the Exponential Conference, which has a very huge platform. What were some of the intentional actions you started to take to make movement on that? And
I think that a lot of those things have taken more time and a lot more effort than I probably anticipated. But for example, you're right. I provide leadership for all three of those organizations right now. At Community, we have, I think, Leanna Weber. Leanna's a part of our lead team. Mm-hmm. We also, Tammy Melching. Tammy actually leads our teaching. The majority, actually at this point, of our strategic team are female leaders. Within New Thing, I think there's 6 of us that sit on the lead team. 2 of them are women. Within Exponential, there's 5 of us that are on the lead team, and 2 of them are women. And so there's been intentionality of trying to really develop female leaders and then also give them a seat at the table as best we can. And I think we still got a ways to go in each of those areas. Talk to me a little bit about some of the initiatives you've been doing for church planting and women, because I think some of the challenges for women, especially in church plants, is I feel called to also plant a church. My husband and I are doing it together. Sometimes we have solo female church planters, but rarely. But oftentimes a woman who is planting with her husband can fall into that pastor's wife world that isn't quite looked at the same. Talk a little bit about that experience. You're married to a very strong woman. I'm sure that's part of your guys' story even. Talk a little bit about your perspective as someone who spends a lot of time in the church planting space. Honestly, it's a huge frustration for me because, again, I feel like we're desperate for more and we need more and more church planters. And, the adage, I think young girls need to see it before they can be it. And we don't have enough yet women for them to actually see it. So a couple things. Personally, whenever I run across female leaders that are especially leading either as like a campus pastor or as a lead pastor, I almost always try to connect with them, and we'll often hand them off to our folks within Exponential Next. This is one of our verticals where we talk about what's coming next. We have maybe we can talk about that a little bit. We're doing with Women Next. I just came from Kansas City. Actually, I flew in, got back home this morning and met a young lady who's 29, who's a campus pastor, just started as a campus pastor. You could tell she's just totally stoked out of her mind, and got her information because I want to get her connected with other women I know and also learn from her. And so we can highlight what she's doing. I met on the ride there, just the person who picked us up she was another speaker at a conference I was speaking at, a woman named Beth Nelson, who leads a church. It's more than 1,000 people in Fargo, North Dakota, and who I had not met before, who's the lead pastor there, and got to know her a little bit. And as we were on the ride back, made sure I got her information because, again, want to do everything we can to try to highlight those folks so that girls that are grown up, it's not abnormal, it's not exceptional. It's kind of like there's a variety of different models you can look at. And one of the things I consistently do is I will hand it off to our team at Exponential Next. So we have, within Exponential, there's 4 verticals. The first vertical is called Next. It really deals with the future. And so future topics, future-oriented themes. So we have Exponential AI, Exponential Microchurch, Exponential Next Gen, but also Exponential Women, or Next Women. And within that, and you've been a great resource for us. Thank you very much. We do webinars. We'll also do podcasts. We also offer articles just to encourage women so they can make connections, hear from one another, and learn things about it's a pretty tough field still for women in the area of pastoral leadership. Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you think there are any things that are still really misunderstood about female leaders in sort of church cultures, or things that we need to keep in mind as we work with women leaders who are up and coming? Yeah. Did I not ask that with a straight enough face? No, I guess I'm not laughing so much because I'm just thinking about how many things. I think I've tried to advocate for it, but it's just how much I think I'm still learning about it. And a couple different things come to mind. A couple things I've learned recently. We did something at Community, and actually Leanna Weber, I'll give her props. And I think Leanna, our executive pastor.
I do.
So
She's great.
She has to initiate that. Yeah, she has to initiate this, and we gave it our blessing. Yeah, go do this. She did something last year called Empowered to Lead. And basically, it was just a kind of like a lunch and learn where we'd invite a speaker in, and maybe it'd be for a couple hours, but we'd also have a lunch around it. And it was really about, understanding what it means to be a female leader. And Tammy did something basically hitting all the different, just going back to the Bible, the biblical framework for it, which seriously, that was so good. It was just really good. But we also, Danielle Strickland happened to be at Community, the church where I lead pastor, for an Exponential Central conference. So after the conference finished that Wednesday, we had her stick around. And one of the things like Danielle talked about too was, and maybe you've talked about this, but I missed it. She talked about a 30% threshold. Mm. And she said, you want to try to, in any circle, try to get 30%. And I was like, and the way she began to explain it as we tried to move there, I thought was very clever and very helpful. So for example, and because I lead at Exponential, I'm the CEO, and I also lead a new thing. I'm the lead visionary, and then I lead at Community, and I'm the lead pastor. And so I have these three laboratories. Now currently, and I'm not really pleased with that Community, we only have one female on our lead team, where at New Thing, we have 2 of the 6, and then at Exponential, we have 2 of the 5. And in both the groups where we have more than 30%, or you have 2, it significantly changes the conversation.
In what way?
Does that make sense? I would say like a Community. So we just had a retreat, right? A lead. So, and Leanna's there and everybody's there, and she's awesome. And she deals with it, but we're talking about sports, we're talking about hunting, we're talking about all the things that are more typically guys' stuff. But all of a sudden, when you have 2, there's other topics that get introduced that might be more typically kind of female kind of stuff that are interests. And it just changes the conversation because the 2 of them are talking about it, and then you have to enter into their world. And so that was an aha. Both the challenge that was an aha, and then actually seeing the implications, the application of it was aha. I think it's been a benefit to have that 30% or more in the room, because I think it helps you make better decisions. But that was different.
Yeah, when you have more than one, or you start to hit that 30 to 40% threshold that thinks differently than the majority, you really start to get that diversity of conversation, diversity of ideas. And I think part of what's important to remember too is part of what it does is it unlocks the groupthink. So when you have any one domination of anything, so like I challenge sometimes children's pastors, like just because you have a bunch of 30-year-old white moms on your leadership team, you're no less diversified than other parts of the church, because all of you are going to think fairly much the same. The power of diversity is getting different perspectives. And so when you introduce at least a couple women, or that 30 to 40% threshold that's not like the majority, that's when you start to really have more integration of ideas and more collaboration.
You said it better than me. And I think that's been my experience.
I felt like you were going to add one more thing. I don't want to miss it. Sorry about that.
This has been, and also the last, more recent too. I had a key female leader tell me this, and I don't know, but it was an aha for me. And she said, I never enter into a room where I don't feel judgment. Let me be more specific. And she was talking about church spaces, or particularly spaces where she was going to be speaking. I never enter in a room where you don't feel judgment. Now, I've already conveyed a little bit of who I am. And I think thanks to growing up, I have a pretty confident self. So that, first of all, felt different. But she really connected it with being a woman. And I've kind of tested this on enough other women that not every woman feels that way. But I think the vast majority of women in church spaces do. And I was like, wow. One, it's hard work to get prepared to give a talk where you're going to really challenge people around spiritual things to begin with. But then to have to do it with the background, emotional and mental knowledge that people are judging me just because of my gender is like, and it kind of hit. And I know you're kind of going like, well, no kidding, Dave. But for me, it was an aha. I was like,
yeah,
wow.
It is.
And I would parallel it to my conversations with my friends who are people of color, who they would talk about code switching. And it feels like it's a female version of kind of code switching, where you're going, okay, here I have to kind of enter into somebody else's world and not know exactly how they think. I'm going to try to say it the way they want me to say it, and I'm going to try to listen the way they want me to listen. Where as a white, I guess I would say as a white guy, I feel like there's not, at least a lot of the space, not all, but a lot of the space I'm in, it's just not that way. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's challenging because there's a balance. As a leader and as a communicator, our job actually is to serve the people in the room we're speaking in front of. It is my job to understand the audience and adjust myself accordingly. But I do think since we're talking about women, and it is true for people of color or maybe even different age or ethnic background, but we do have to battle people who are resistant to who we are at the same time. So that first 10 minutes is so much more loaded for someone like me to come in and speak, because I'm having to disarm and let people know that I'm not actually aggressive or going to like insult them or demasculate them. But then I also need to show them a family gal. But if I show too much of my family, I'm not a strong enough leader and I probably don't have expertise. And then I also need to be likable, but I want to be respected. So there's all these double binds. And I'm like, most guys walk in. I do a lot of coaching of communicators. If they flash a picture up from Christmas with their kids, the whole audience is with them. They're like, you're an awesome dad. I love you. What do you want to tell me? And I'm trying to hit 17 things in my first 7 minutes just to be able to get to the content. And so that is a lot more work. I think a lot of women feel that. And so they take that as a sign that they're not a good communicator, or maybe they aren't gifted in this, or this isn't what God has called them to do, because it seems like so much more work than their male peers. And it is, but that should not be equated with lack of calling or lack of gifting or lack of anointing. It's really just the navigating of the dynamics of the room.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is a challenge to know where that line ends. I think the other thing that's unique for female leaders, just to give a shout out to those who are listening, is one of the assumptions, I think, is that we would feel much more confident if we were speaking to a room of women. But most women who have really particularly strong leadership gifts often also don't feel that comfortable and feel very judged in front of a group of women also. And so there isn't really a space that you walk in that you can feel really at home, which is why, and I think Exponential Women Next is doing this also, but it's why I invest a lot in cohorts, a lot of coaching, because there's not a lot of women who have high, strong leadership gifts, who love Jesus and are called into ministry. When we find each other, it's usually a group of 3 at some dinner of 200. And we're like, you exist. I know I'm not alone. We try to gather each other. We try to connect each other. We try to meet up with each other. We try to open the door for other women like that. And we honestly have to be a little selective, because who's in that room really matters, because it's so unique to find people who are that slice of the kingdom at this time and place in history.
And thanks for doing that. Because I know for people, I know I can speak for Leanna and other people. I know they're really grateful for your influence. So thank you for doing that kind of stuff.
Well, it's an honor. And I'm also just trying to find my people too. So we're all on a journey together. Yeah. Dave, what would you say are some of the things you're working on now personally in your leadership around leading women on these leadership teams, maybe more in your own dynamics or your own personal leadership practices?
Oh, that's a great question. I think in the spaces that we're in, a few things come to mind, and maybe I hope I'm not being redundant, but I'm trying to make sure that we are platforming women in each of those areas, whether it's Exponential. So like this year's Exponential, Jenny Allen's going to open the conference. Christine Kane's going to close the conference. And we're also trying to get a diversity of people from a variety of backgrounds there as well. So as I looked at them, going, we still don't have enough women. And so Sarah Jackson, she's awesome. You'll have to meet her at Exponential. She goes to Holy Trinity Brompton, and she oversees the church.
Oh,
church
I do know Sarah. Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yes, she's amazing.
She is amazing. So in addition, what we did then is I also got her coming in, and she's going to lead all the prayer moments at the end of every session. And then Noemi, Chavez will co-host with me. So it's like, okay. So now it starts to feel a little better. Because again, whether it's an exponential or again, whether we're doing something, a new thing or a community, that effort, that idea that girls need to see it in order to be it. I try to be really intentional too about trying to like the two people that I mentioned that I met just was in Kansas City. So I think I've already, I had one of them. I already introduced to my wife, Sue, who works with Lori Ruffin in Exponential Next Women, because I'm trying to get them connected there. Because particularly, this is so funny, because I just met Beth. If she listens to this podcast, she'll be like, why is he talking about me so much? Because maybe she's somebody that, there just aren't that many women out there that are leading the church more than 1,000 people. So I wanted to connect them because, maybe that's somebody that we could have on the podcast to go like, no, look, you can lead at that kind of high level. So with that, when I was in Beaumont, Texas 2 weeks ago, ran into another woman and trying to have like what you referred to, those I see in you conversations. Because you know how some people, they just got it. Oh my gosh. You could tell she has got it going on. And I don't know if church planting, I don't know if ministry is going to be her thing or not, but if she wanted to and she felt the call, she would crush it. And trying to have I see in you conversations with her. Also trying to encourage men to not be afraid of one-on-one or 1-to-2 leadership development opportunities. I don't know why that still exists, but it just creates this glass ceiling where, if the power exists in the hands of a few guys up there and you're not willing to have one-on-one, 1-on-2 leadership development meetings with those female leaders, how are they ever going to get to those roles of senior leadership? And again, I'm not even thinking of it anymore from a theological perspective, but more from a strategic position, going like, we're not going to get this thing done if we don't mobilize all the people for the mission. So those are things that kind of I think are at the forefront of my mind.
I love that. All of those are important. The role modeling is important. I think especially just an encouragement to the people listening, those I see in you conversations, especially for competent female leaders, it may seem like they know who they are and are confident, but the number of those conversations, they can probably count on one or two hands that someone has had with them. And so never miss an opportunity to affirm gifting in a female leader, call out potential, say what you see them that they could be doing. It's water to the soul of a leader in general, but particularly for female leaders, they tended to grow up without a lot of those kind of conversations. And so they need that reminder and that affirmation that they're not crazy. They're not being arrogant, thinking they've got giftedness that they don't. They really need the community of believers, especially male leaders, to affirm those gifts and verbally point them out.
Can I just hitchhike on that real quick?
Please, yes.
So I think I wrote Hero Maker in 2018 or 19, somewhere in there. So I've been teaching that stuff all over the place for the last, 5 years or so. And when I first, because we do these 5 different practices, and then one of the tools is I see in you conversations. And so I'm teaching that. And I'd say for the first year or so, I would say something like, and many of you are in the room because somebody saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself, that they gave you a chance to do something that you probably didn't deserve, but they believed in you maybe before they should have even believed you and took a risk on you. So I'm saying that's kind of part of the bit. And then I don't know what, at one place where I was teaching, I said, I'm just curious, how many of you have had that? And what I noticed, this verifies what exactly you're saying, is all the guys' hands went up and some of the women. And that's what it was like for me. It was like, oh my. And I've since then started correcting it. You're right. Again, it's one of those things I wasn't aware of, that women don't have those kind of conversations nearly as often, at least in the church space, as do men.
When we did the research for Developing Female Leaders book, one of the really interesting pieces that came back in the research with women that we interviewed and surveyed is that if they had a conversation like that before the age of 19, they had broken through the glass ceiling of leadership in the church, and they were on staff or leading a department or doing something that they felt like they were being a leader. If they didn't have someone affirm that before the age of 19, they were still in volunteer, wondering if they could even coordinate a greeter service or something. And so just to really encourage people, even if you're walking by a 16-year-old 20-year-old who's like, looks like she's half there, just affirm something in her, please. Call her a leader. Just put it out there. You can't hurt anybody. You can only help.
Right.
Yep. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. So what do you think guys misunderstand about female leaders when they're trying to lead them? Any insight on things you've learned with the strong female leaders you lead?
I think they do, at least, and I'll speak for myself. I think they miss how hard it is. I think for a lot of our friends who are also people of color or minorities, I think there's a difficulty for them to lead in a lot of the white spaces. And I think it's not this white male spaces. And I think it's not not that much dissimilar. And I might be wrong. You can correct me if it is. I think we still don't know how hard it is, how much, like if I can show up in a space and I'm giving 100%, if Kadi Cole comes, she's probably going to have to give 125% for the same thing. I think we miss that. And I think we also miss, I think we don't know what we're missing. Some of the female leaders, whether it's a Tammy Meldsheen, who's the point person in our teaching team, who's coming out with her first book, I'll give a little plug.
Oh, please. She's amazing. Such a son.
She is awesome. Yes, she is. It's a book. It's going to be on the Sermon on the Mount. And so whether it's her or it's Leanna or at New Thing, Alana Terry and Sarah Williams, or if it's at Exponential, everybody loves and should, Terry Saliba and Carrie Williams, the contribution and the unique perspective that they bring in the same way that Raj, who is our chief of staff at Exponential, who's Indian, also brings a unique perspective because he was born in Calcutta and came here at the age of 20. But somebody who was born in a church planting church in Calcutta, who actually got prayed for by Mother Teresa. When you bring people like that together, it creates a much more robust environment than if you look around the table and everybody looks the same and has had a lot of the same experiences.
Yeah. And I think especially in ministry and the work that we do, you see how big God is. Like God gets bigger in your own experience of him and in his body. And so we're able to even communicate the bigness of God more as a church family, and in your preaching that tends to really trickle out. So that's really great.
I have a question for you. Can I do that?
Sure. Please.
So here's my question. I hadn't thought about it. So like, in my role, like I oversee Exponential. We'll take that one, for example. I mean, if you could wave a magic wand and go like, oh my gosh, I wish Dave and the Exponential team would get this, what would you say?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I think you are doing a great job.
Particularly as relates to this topic.
Yeah, I see a lot of effort in those directions. I do think one of the challenges, specifically for Exponential, because the conference, I was going to say like I'm on your team. I put myself on your team a long time ago, by the way. So I consider my part of the Exponential team.
I consider you a part of my team.
But the focus is really on church leaders. And I think the challenge for most women who are in actual local church ministry, which I think is really at the epicenter of the kingdom, is that we don't have a lot of examples of that. So even though we have some women who are speaking, not a lot of them are still running volunteer teams or preaching every weekend to a congregation that's politically divided, or trying to navigate and pastoring parents through a transitioning young adult or young teenager child who's having surgery for gender dysphoria. Like the front line that most female leaders in ministry are navigating are incredibly intense. And we have a lot of workshops about a lot of those things, but I think the kind of women we have speaking on the platform, the next step would be, the first step is having women. The next step would be actually women who are in the front line of ministry, talking from the heart of people who are pastorally bleeding for their community. Because that's what I think is at the heart of Exponential. But we haven't quite gotten to the place where we have women doing that role in main speaking moments.
Do you think that kind of would happen effectively if we did it in like a track or workshops or breakouts?
I think that's a place to start if you don't have great speakers. I think women pastors have a different way of communicating in their messages that our whole audience would really benefit from. And so it's similar to when I have people call me for like a female perspective. They're like, we'd like a female perspective on this. I'm like, that's great, but I'm one female of many. Like, you just have my perspective. I don't know that I can represent all women. I mean, I have an opinion, of course, because I always have an opinion. And so I think just the representation being closer to the epicenter of women in the week in and week out of local church ministry, and hearing the burden and the heartbreak and what God is revealing to those women. We have a lot of pastors, male pastors, who speak from that heart. Like I feel like some of our most effective communicators are male pastors who are on the front line, who are coming in because they've been like, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I had to plead for God to teach me something, and this is what he taught me. Maybe it'll help you too. I think that's happening for women pastors also. We just don't get to hear those stories just yet. That's good. All right. No, that's helpful. Thank you. There you go. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So I'd love, just in closing, for those women who are out there, particularly women serving in ministry, maybe women pastors or directors, or particularly women who are on the front line of local churches, what encouragement or advice or, word of affirmation do you have for them and the callings they're trying to show up and stay faithful in every day? First of all, I would, for those that are listening in, I want to say, we need you. The mission of Jesus desperately needs you, and we need you using the full complement of all of your gifts, and keep doing that. So thank you very much for doing that, and keep doing that. And thank you for when I only have to give 100% and you give 125%. Thank you for doing that. It's a really big deal. I would also then do everything you can, because you probably have more influence on the young women around you and girls around you than your male counterparts do. So make sure you're part of the solution, and that you're not making the same mistakes that a lot of male leaders have made, and which is, now that I've got the power, I'm going to hold on to it. Be empowered to others. Encourage, don't be threatened by other women. Encourage other women to also use their full gifts. I promise you. There's dysfunctional systems and organizations where this won't happen. But on the whole, taking that hero-making posture, okay, where you are empowering, equipping, and releasing and being permission-giving to other women, it'll only spread your influence. Your influence will only grow and expand, and you'll make an even greater impact. So do everything you can to have those IC&U conversations to encourage other women. And honestly, too, if there's ways that I can help, my email is Dave Ferguson at exponential.org. I'd love to get you connected next women. And as with Kadi's challenge too, I would love to know some of the female leaders that are leading larger churches, who are used to speaking to large groups, and also have gone through some of those really hard things that, like, I know every pastor has to go through, and you can speak to those folks. I'd love to also hear from you, or really any of the female leaders, but those in particular could be a big help to me. So anyway, I would say thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, and make sure you don't make some of the mistakes the guys have made. Awesome. That is great advice. Dave, thank you so much for today. Thanks for being a champion for women and for all your great insight here. This has been really helpful and encouraging, and I just really appreciate you and Sue and your friendship. So thank you. Thank you, Kadi, and thanks for what you do. It's a big deal. Thanks for joining us on the Together Project. Check out our free theological cheat sheet, or grab a copy of my book, Developing Female Leaders, to learn more about the dynamics of how we can all do a better job creating church cultures where every leader can thrive. You can find those resources and more at kadiCole.com. Remember, the future is not just male or female. The future is together. See you next time.